Good evening, welcome. I want to share with you the importance of history to the development of Africa's entrepreneurs, innovators, philosophers, scientists, achievers, the importance of history to their development. Somebody said that if you don't know history or the history, you easily think that the African is under a curse. Something is wrong with him. Those who have controlled empires for the last 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 5,000 years, they constantly train their people. Those who take over the throne with their history. The history of their dominance, the history of those who serve them. Now, those who don't control a lot easily think that history is nothing, it's not important. We can't live there. We just have to move forward. You don't have to blame somebody, you don't have to hate anybody. Because nobody told them the essence of history. Then I asked them, why do you read the Bible? Because if you read the Bible every day, you're reading history. It's history you're reading. So if you think that history is not important, you're dishonest. You're dishonest because sometimes you can look at your pictures, you look at your pictures and you look at when you were 2 years. That is if you had parents who took pictures of you. Not every one of us had that. Maybe when you were 3 years, they took picture of you. When you were 5 years and your birthday party, they took picture of you. When you were graduating, they took picture of you. Why do you think they did that? If history is of no importance, and we can't continue to look back like the way people say, then what do you? Did you just get here? Can somebody just meet you and say that, but you don't have any parents, you didn't go to any school, you have never done anything? Is that the case? When they meet you, they are meeting all that you have been through, and that make you, or those things make the essence of your presence. If you go to Asante, for example, and there's a dispute between two chiefs, they call them Bebongro. Where do you come from? Who are your ancestors? Come and tell us why you think you deserve this thing. Why do you think they do that? Because they know the importance of history. And the creation of today is nothing but history. And so there's no separation between today and history. It's only different, or is only trivialized by the one who is only self-focused. If you're self-focused and your interest is only yourself, you have no essence, no attachment to history. And there's a common thread among such people. They always think that those who say that history is important and we should look at it and how we have become what we have become because of history, they think that we're just looking for excuses. And then they turn around to say that, but why? What is wrong with us as Africans? Now, there are all kinds of thoughts when it comes to Africa and where we are. But what I want to focus on is the relevance of history in developing the people who can change the course of Africa. The entrepreneurs, the innovators, the philosophers, those achievers who can do. We don't need everybody to study the history. We don't need everybody. We only need the ones who can think for the future that we so much deserve. And those people would have to be trained and developed well. And nothing will train them more than the kind of history that has brought us to where we are as a group of people. Now, if you look at the last 6,000 years, there were a lot of things before the 6,000 years. So let's track it. Usually they use Christ as the focal point. So let's say they said that Jesus was born for the last 2,000 years. So let's say the 4,000 years before him, what happened? The 4,000 years before he came, what happened? Who were the Africans? What did they achieve? And the last 2,000 years after he came and died, what has happened? A lot of the confusion around the world, I think, a lot of, especially tagged to Africans, a lot of them have only happened just about the last 800 years. I think so. The last 800 years, there's been a lot of confusion, especially when the Arabs came. When the jihadists, they started to come in the 7th century, 8th century, when they started to come and take over a lot of things and bent a lot of things, bent a lot of things in the northern part of Africa, took over a lot of things. From that point to now, Africa has never seen peace. And then the Europeans also came around the 16th century. They also came to destroy a lot of things. And so when we start to ask questions, all the intelligent questions that our scientists, if you happen to have gone to school in Ghana, for instance, and you happen to have studied engineering, chemistry, physics, mathematics, those kind of courses, if you didn't go to Legon to say do a bit of African history or African studies, you don't know much about African history, especially if you are the product of the junior high. The very few that they told you about maybe is Songhai Empire in Sundiata Keita, those kind of things, and we didn't even see the importance of them and how those things were going to shape the way we look at ourselves as a people. So there's a lot of misunderstanding on the Africans and a lot of blame, especially those who are very much passionate. They have a lot of zeal, but they have not taken the pain to school themselves in terms of history, because they think that once they can understand technology and they can understand engineering, they can understand science, then they are it. No, you should first of all understand yourself. Then you can use the engineering to create something, or the technology to create something. If somebody else decided to change the history that had to get to you, that person is constantly in charge. What do you think the last Commonwealth meeting, what do you think they went there to do? It was a representation of history. Somebody was trying to assert his dominance or their dominance over a group of people in the past, and they still don't want to let them go. So the importance of history to the development of the entrepreneur, of the innovators, of the philosophers, very much key. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to agree with it. You don't have to. But if you look beyond just the liberation, not only yourself, but the liberation of a group of people, a group of, a race. Because if you say the African is made up of a lot of things. There are a lot of, kingdoms and empires and tribes in the African. If you even say the black, it goes beyond the Africans. There are a lot of blacks all over the world who are still tagged with the word Africa. Yet, for the last 300 years or so, really, when they intensified, 300 or 400 years or so, when they intensified and they tried to tag the African as a second-class human being, not only on the continent, but everywhere that they took them. Never in history was there a point where a group of people, human beings, were tagged as second-class human beings. Except when they started to talk about Darwinism and all the European philosophers and their merchants and their religious leaders, when they started to explain and pacify their conscience, they started to say that these guys were not full human beings, so we could use our religion, our science, our technology to dominate them and still not feel bad. So that's the time that they started to infiltrate knowledge with all kind of theories about how powerful one race is over the other. So if you look at it well, there's one race which is so much high in class and represents every intelligence, supposedly. And there is another race which is bottom and represents every sickness and pain and inferiority. And there are a lot of the others in between. So the Chinese, the Indians, the Mexicans, everybody else is in between. So the top Caucasian is up, and the bottom line is the dark man, the African. And that's the kind of history that they have pushed on us. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of Africans believe it. Okay, a lot of Africans believe it. Whether they have been to school or they have not been to school, they believe it. Subconsciously, they believe it, because they have not taken the burden to see the essence of history. Now, they have believed it to their disadvantage, the errors in history. And then the Caucasians have believed the errors to their advantage. So they believe that they are superior. They believe that they epitomize technology, commerce, entrepreneurship, philosophy. They epitomize that. They have really pushed themselves to represent that, such that any achievement in history, whether it's 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 400 years, they will do everything to get connected to it. And every non-achievement, they will try to do everything to connect the African to it. It's a sad situation, but they can only control the people who don't really study and learn, and only take what they tell us. So there is some kind of importance of history to the development of those who can shape and control the future of Africa. And I think the right sense of history is so much important, because then it can reduce the frustration. Because sometimes you can see that some of the guys are very much frustrated with the kind of things that Africa has gone through, and the kind of blames and everything that they push on the Africans, and all the beautiful things and the intelligence and the creation and the innovation that they attach in quote to the white man. Okay, so the people who are blaming the Africans and saying that we are savage and we know nothing, some of them are not white people. Some of them are people like us. But their content, they did not study much. They didn't learn much. Nobody taught them. So they are where they are. Some of them are authorities, I'm telling you. The authorities, they are doctors, they are lawyers, they are judges. But the content in terms of Africans and the achievement is that much low. So they talk in defense of everybody else but the Africans. So the people who don't know their history are easily persuaded or easily conquered and controlled. The people who don't know their history, somebody said that one, that you can easily control a lot of people if you twist their history. If you twist their history. Did you know that in 1900 the Ashantis, the Ashanti Kingdom fought against the introduction of Western education? They revolted against it. There are a lot of revolt for the last, I will not go into, say, the 6,000 year kind of history, even though those are important, because if you don't put some things rightly, you always think that the African is disadvantaged easily. And that's why I think that every African should, if they are not teaching us history, I was told that in Nigeria they don't even teach them any history at all. So you can see the product that are coming from Nigeria. Confusion. So every race, especially the black one, because of the distortion, if you don't teach them anything, don't ever deceive yourself that we don't live in history. You're lying. You're constantly living in history. Don't we celebrate in 1967 6 March every day? What do you think it is? Every year we celebrate that. What do you think it is? You open your Bible, you read it. What do you think you're reading? It's time. So far as there is time, those things will never go away. And those who know their importance will use it to control those who trivialize that. And so a lot of people who don't see the essence of history as a tool for domination are the same kind of people who trivialize history. Because history is a tool. You think that the Prince Charles or William or those that they are giving birth to, you think that you will not teach them any history about their kingdom? A lie. The sense of data, the kind of data they have, is so much powerful than the average English citizen. That's why they are the controllers of the empire. So the right history is the foundation of a race, of a group of people. It is their root. Now, the Africans are made up of a lot of tribes. Up until when the Arabs started to come here, or the Europeans started to come here, we saw ourselves as tribes and as a, not as color. We didn't see ourselves as color. They came, they saw us as one group of people, but yes, there is a common thread, a common heritage, but at a point, we could not even communicate among ourselves. So if you're a Yoruba man, you could not communicate with a Ashanti man, So the Yorubas would have their culture, the way they do things, and the Ashantis will have their culture and the way they do things, and they were fighting. So they didn't see themselves as just because they are black, they are one people. And that gave some people advantage for the kind of infiltration and the conquering that they supposedly had, because the revolt, the resistance were coming from the tribes, not the group as black race. Let's fight this white man because he came for us as color. We didn't see that they came for us as color. We saw them as another group with different color, but they thought that we one people, so conquer every one of them and capture them and send them into something else. So the time that they were capturing us, the time that they were fighting us, the time that we were fighting some other people to capture them and sell them, the same time there was industrialization going on. The time that they were keeping our people as slaves, they were also trying to develop some machines. Now, so we had a lot of our people moved. A lot of the properties, a lot of the minerals moved. A lot of the people who were strong moved. And we're still fighting. It's not because we didn't see the value of human beings, but it was a practice. People were fighting. The Germans were fighting with, the English were fighting. The Irish have been fighting. The Gaelic people. So if you say somewhere, you say that, they're just stupid people trying to just sell their people somewhere. And that's the kind of history that they left for you. They never tell you the resistances that your people put up. They never tell you the kind of kingdoms that they had to fight for centuries before they could overcome. They never tell you. They will never tell you that. And when they started to write all the intelligent books about commerce and technology and history, they never put any achievement of ours there. And then they came to impose their language on us. Okay, so say 1611 or 1619 to what year? 1957. Which kind of books did they write about the African scientists or the African engineer or the African doctors? Because they were writing those books according to the way they saw life, according to the way they understood science, or they understood religion, or they understood technology. And our kind of religion, our kind of science, our kind of technology, they didn't see it as important. So they would not put them, even if they saw some achievement somewhere, they would not put them in their books to say that this guy, Kwasi Nkrumah, was a good innovator. This guy was a merchant, he was an entrepreneur. He built something. They will never say that, because one of the worst argument to hear is that the Africans were even selling their own people. So let's assume the Africans were selling their own people. So those guys who were selling a lot of the people that they sold, technically they were business people. So can we have their names in the books? So there's a lot of information that they have put out there, which have made them the powerhouse. So you cannot produce a strong people who don't know or who don't have any knowledge of where they come from. You cannot produce any strong people. Because when we talk of strong people, we are talking of people who are ready to defend the sanity of their heritage and of their people, who are ready to defend something that is right. You cannot produce such people if they don't have that sense of history, of their own race, of their own tribe, of their own achievement. You know, even they use religion, especially Christianity, to teach a lot of wrong things on the African race. In Genesis chapter I think 10 or 11, the table of nations, they use that to say that somebody else was cursed, so all the black people were cursed. And you have heard preachers use that. Now they may not be able to say that today, but they say it in another form. They say it in another form. And so you can see that for the last 800 or 1,000 years, the African has been under constant assault and annihilation. The Africans. We call them Africans, but they didn't call themselves Africans. They call themselves their tribes and the kingdoms and empires that they live in. And when so the Arabs came, they destroyed a lot before the Europeans came. The Arabs destroyed a lot. Now these things, if you're a science student, if you're an engineering student, if you're a medical student, they didn't put them in the books. I did engineering. Nobody told us anything about this. They just told us Einstein and thermodynamics laws and all those things that they taught. And they think that if they teach you those things, you'll be able to use them to innovate. Innovation comes with a lot of strength, with a lot of courage to challenge that which existed. So if you control the thought and gave them all the heroes and the examples of achievers and creators as people who looked at those who came to dominate us, how would I be able to innovate and even have the confidence to challenge the status quo? And so consciously, in the back of our mind, we've been programmed to see the Europeans as the standard of excellence, the standard of everything. So we dare not challenge all the ideas, the science, even if they don't work. We dare not challenge the economic laws that they have given us in modern day, that they don't work. We can't. Because where is the information? Where are the information that you can use until you start to learn yourself? Until you start to read the history yourself. So people people kind of put all kind of argument. Read the history, and I don't even think that it's just about the history of when Columbus went to America or when the first ship landed on the shores of Africa. No, I am talking of the history beyond Christ. We are talking of history of the Egyptian civilization, of all those things, from at least for the last 6,000 years or so. Can you read materials on those? Because it appears it's long, but it's not that much long, because all these achievements in modern day just happened the other day. You know, the Germans Second World War were destroyed. They just happened to have built something in the last 50, 60, 70 years. And that was the time that we were also fighting for independence. Yeah. And we were trying, they left some kind of government system there that we still try to figure them out. They left some kind of education here that we are still trying to figure them out. They left some kind of legal, judges. Our judges still wear those kind of things, and they will defend them till they die. And so and you cannot fight them, because that's what they came to meet and that's what they know. And somebody has told them some kind of history that has kept us in this kind of status. So if you want to innovate, if you want to be an entrepreneur, because we need a lot of those guys, the philosophers, you cannot use the European content to create a new Africa, the future that we can see for the next 30, 50, 40, 60, 100 years of Africa. We need proper content in our own context, because the scheme that they have used is really Western. And yet our history, our culture, everything that we represent is totally almost opposite a lot of the standards that they use to mark us. A typical example is you see the way they use economic indicators. In their economy, people have access to credit card, so they can easily buy. In our economy, there's no credit card for you, so you have to work, have the cash to go and buy. In their economy, people say that they have houses. They give them mortgage. In our economy, if you want to own a house, majority of the people, you have to build it yourself, cash. Typical example. So how can you use their standard in terms of accounts to bring them here? The same with entrepreneurship development. If they are able to try an idea and it works, and they know that there is a market for it, the next minute you see that there are some people they call investors who just come in and say that, okay, let's see if it can work. They come in, whether they take equity or they give you debt, and the debt usually is very cheap, and they can help you with all kind of business management systems to easily build your business. Now we are even yet to have addresses for our people. Address, data, proper data, to even build trust in an economy. So you cannot use the same kind of standard. You can't go to Harvard and say that they taught me this in Harvard, so I'm going to use it in Ghana to build the economy, and it works. It will work. The same with innovation. If you want to innovate, you must innovate with the content that is here, and that will call for some kind of history. Go and read. It's not everything that they are telling you in the secondary school book or in the university books that were written by the Europeans are right. A lot of them are in error. A lot of them have to be challenged. A lot of them are not true. We don't need everybody, every African. No, we can have a lot of them to play and dance. It doesn't matter. But the people who can, we need creators, we need thinkers, we need philosophers, we need entrepreneurs who can build the future. Those kind of people, they cannot think like the average guy who does not care about these things, The average guy does not have to care. We don't even care. But the people who are that much thoughtful and worried and concerned of our future must see the essence of the history that you have been told, if you've even been told at all. Because majority of the people, if you look at the way we are living now, the symptoms, our choices, our decisions, they represent the content in terms of history that we have on ourselves. The history, the kind of knowledge, the appreciation that we have for ourselves, the value we have for our people, they represent the essence of history. Because once you have the history, it defines you. Let's say you never knew that your grandfather was the Asantehene, or your mother's brother was the Asantehene. They never knew. They never told you. And so let's say you grew up somewhere, nobody respected you, nobody cared about you. You were poor, you just eating on the street. And then maybe your mother died, so nobody told you. Your father died, you didn't have contact with any of your family people. Then maybe somewhere, somebody happened to find you. So that, do you know that you come from the Manchia Palace? And that your uncle, the one on the stool, is looking for you. Just that point that they tell you that, your sense of identity changes. Everything. You start to look at it. Wow. I didn't know I was a royal. I thought I was nobody. So the information, the quality of information in history that they give you can build your confidence. The same way, somebody can destroy that quality information and give you a wrong one, and that will destroy your confidence and sense of esteem. And that the latter is what they use on us. So they try to destroy every data that ever said that Africans were achievers, Africans were innovators, Africans were entrepreneurs, Africans were engineers. They try to destroy every data that represents that. In our culture, even in religion, they try to destroy every data. If you pick the Bible, do you see Africans in it? If you're Christian, do you see the role that Africans play in them? Unless somebody shows you. There are a lot of them there. But unless somebody shows you, you'll never see. Because they never tell you. What amazes me is whenever they always paint Jesus white and then they paint the devil black. That is history. It's not just somebody's fiction. It's history that the last 200, 300 years some people started to just present these Africans as nothing but savage. And unfortunately, the Africans themselves have believed it. They have believed it, and they are blaming themselves every day. Track it and see. That even if you pick Ghana, the typical year that we had as a people to develop was when? Can we count the number of years that we had to develop as a people? Just count. 1957, Kwame Nkrumah. And then he ruled for maybe whatever years, 9 years or so. The latter part was not good. Then some crazy guys came, did coup d'etat, and then Buzia came for some few years, in 2 years or so, he went. Then so another, then Jeronis had 19 years. And then, mix, then some people came. Technically, for how long have you really been stable in building a civilization and building a country and building a nation? Where we changed a lot of errors that were coming from the 19s and the 80s. We didn't have that kind of time to change a lot of things. Even educational content, we still have not improved a lot of them. Go to Legon and see, they're still trying to teach the same kind of thing to a generation like ours, expecting us to innovate as the Chinese and create as the Chinese, at least. With which confidence? Because the image the people have on themselves is just an extract of the history that they've been told. So that's why you have a young engineer who has finished Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology, Science and Technology, trying to tell you that everything that you see was created by the white one. And that if the Africans were slaves, what makes us think that in the new land, the slaves could ever come up with anything? He doesn't know that some of them were scientists, some of them were innovators, some of them were creators, some of them were entrepreneurs. Nobody told him. So now he's confident with an error. And we have a lot of them all along. They are experts with the wrong knowledge of their own race, of themselves. That's why they cannot innovate and think of anything that can be customized to help us grow. Because he idolizes the white man. And it's not only him, almost all of us. I started to develop a lot of interest in history when I was doing postgraduate, and I saw how much ignorant I was about my own race, about my own country, about my own race, about myself, and about my own heritage. And so I was like that. There was no root, there was no foundation, because the 4-year course that they gave us in engineering, there was nothing. And why was the education designed that way? Without any, because it's critical for you to train any people. You cannot just teach people science and technology, especially if they're Africans, without teaching them some of the errors that they have told them. Whether they are studying marketing or they are studying business management. The Arabs don't do that. The Arabs try to come out, develop their people with their heritage. The Arabs try to do that. The Chinese try to do that. Even the Europeans, in spite of their errors, they still try to teach their people that. The only people who left everything and went for science and technology and entrepreneurship, as usual, are the Africans. And so they think that when we drum and dance, it means that it's African history. That's just culture. That's not African history. African history is data to make the African people strong. Data. So you can see a chief with all the regalia, gold around him, clothes, and he's begging a 16-year European guy to come and sing KVIP for him. Why? Because the sense of history is not there. So he represents a culture that he has no data, because nobody told him. Nobody told him. If he has any data at all, it's just about 40, 20 years. But those guys are coming out with, if you meet the average Israeli, Netanyahu and those guys, you think they don't have any sense of history? They would have been wiped out if they didn't have any sense of history of their own people and what they have been through to be here and what they have to do for the next generation. So if you don't have the right kind of African history, you are the one who trivialize all the things that we had to endure. And you even say that we have never achieved anything. We may never have achieved that much in terms of science and technology as a group. As a group. Because they didn't allow us to be as a group made up of all the tribes who have the same heritage and look the same. We have not been that much together for long. Because they've been on us. The Arabs came, the Europeans came, and we ourselves we were fighting. So there's the history is scattered, but you can always find one kingdom or one individual or something which achieved a lot. And those they did not put in your school notebook. You have to find them yourself. And if you happen to have a good history teacher who knows a lot, he'll be able to teach you something. But it's important that you find that, because the questions that you're asking today, they show that you need information. And there are a lot of books that people have written, not only on Africans, but the Africans and their descendants who also have been through a lot of turbulence and a lot of rejections around the world. And so I think that the African should have a strong data for you to even move around. It's not because I think if you have the right data, you don't hate anybody based on color. It's only when you don't have the right data, then you try to hate another one. If you have the right kind of information, you can befriend and be with anybody else. But you know what your people have been through and what has to be done. What has to be done to raise them out of that. So don't trivialize that and think that is not important. It's important. If you're going to be a strong entrepreneur, you have to have a strong sense of African history. Or you be the one that you just do everything only for yourself. I've never met anybody with that strong sense of history who only thinks of himself. Never. But I've met a lot of great achievers with that strong sense of history who only think that because they achieve something, it means that the rest of their people or his people are lazy because he was able to achieve something in spite of all the difficulties. Because he thinks only of himself. The liberation comes. There are a lot of errors in religion. There's a lot of errors in commerce. There are a lot of errors even in science on the African. So it's up to you to learn and know that it's history and it's important. So it's not just about reading about science and technology and engineering and business and creation. If you want some calmness and some kind of perspective, to understand what is happening and what can be done for the future, because you can't change the future until you know where we have been from. You can't. You cannot develop any proper strategy and tool to help the Africans if you don't understand how they think and what has informed how they think today. And you cannot understand how they think today if you don't backtrack. So it's not like you just trying to live in history. No, it's It's for you to know what happened before we got here, so that we can know what we would have to do to get to the future. You know, because they're still on us, whether I like it or not. Still trying to tell us the things that are not important. The other day I was told that the secondary school, they even made the history optional. The things that they have to make optional, the history about the people, they made them optional. So we were the same kind of products from the university. They never taught us, and those who even learned it and wrote it for the exam. They did not know that they needed that, because I remember somebody started to teach me this, and I started to gather courage and perspective and strength, and I stopped to blame, and I started to look for solution. That is one of the most important attributes of you getting the right history. You stop to blame and you start to look for the solutions. You become strong because you understand it. Now you can move forward. If you see any African who is that much angry and agitated about why Africa is still here and why African leadership is wrong, why African leadership is wicked, it's because there's no sense of history. It's not. He goes over it. He thinks that it's not important. That's why there's that build-up of anger. What will correct that? Be the right sense of history, and nobody will school you. So you go. If you have nothing at all, Google the importance of African history to the development of Africa's entrepreneurs, innovators, achievers. What history does to you, the right sense of history. Because a lot of us only track history from when, what is his name? Gonjag, or those kind of guys who came, you know, the Portuguese and the Dutch and all those guys, the Europeans who came. Because a lot of our kings and queens fought. But they fought with a sense of defending their tribes, not defending the African race. So they fought, and sometimes they fought the other African tribes as well. And they put a lot of challenge. Not every one of them was selling slaves. Not every one of them was selling their people. A lot of them died. A lot of them rejected the religion and everything that came with it. Okay, and a lot of them, why do you think that they had the gold? What kind of technology did they have to have their own gold and tools and farm implements before the European came? What do you think they had? Where did they have that kind of technology? And possibly, if they had allowed them to grow, maybe we would have improved on all those to handle our own issues. This one, my professor in the university told us that maybe we would have developed on our own technology, which is true. But we have to find a way of growing from here. And I think that it's not just only the engineering that you need. It's not just only the entrepreneurship that you need. I think that you also need to correct a lot of the errors that they have pushed on the Africans. And you have to read. You have to read. And for the people who are concerned of the development of Africa, not every one of us is concerned. You know, a lot of our people don't care. But if you're really concerned of the development of Africa, you would have to know that there is a major role that history plays. And so you don't be making those kind of statements to say that, oh, can't live in history, it's not important. And yet you open the Bible and read about Methuselah. And read about Moses and Jesus every day. What do you think that is? And it's history. If it was not important, they wouldn't have left you the Bible. Okay, so is that important for you to learn it? And it does a lot of healing. It does a lot of healing. If you start to read the right kind of history on Africa, it does a lot of healing. And you become buoyant, strong. Get that sense. You redefine your life. You redefine your heritage. Anytime that you see some of these guys with this kind of infatuation with suit and tie and those kind of things, with with two British names, you know there's a trouble. There's a challenge somewhere. Those are the guys who are defending the white man every day. They happen to be very much infatuated with you know, all kind of things. What do you think in this hot sun, what do you think a young woman will still be bleaching? She's dark and she wants to be fair. And she's wearing all these long weave-ons. What do you think it is? It's just the content. It's weak. Okay? There's no appreciation for that strong sense of history which can give them clear definition of themselves, of their race, and of the courage that they need to build anything. Okay, so you will not see great achievers who are of African descent, who are concerned of Africa, who are not into African history that big. You will never see that. But sometimes you can also see the others who have achieved something but who continue to blame the Africans because they trivialize the history. And they just tell you that we can just go and take over. If you could go and take over, why are we not doing it? Why are we still complaining? To me, there's some kind of weakness that we still have because somebody has told us what we were not. Okay, and so if you think that the Queen will not teach grandchildren their long history, you're deceiving yourself. Okay, if you think that something here will not teach the next guy who is coming after him or the kingdom their history, you're deceiving yourself. If you only think about yourself, you think the history is not important. If you only think of nothing, if you only think of just your world, you think the history is important. Great empires are always teaching their people, where they come from, their achievement, their enemies, their heroes, constantly teaching them. Okay, so which entrepreneur do you know who was an African in the last 700 years or 1,000 years? If you're a Christian, which Africans do you know in the last 2,000 years who did significant, who made significant contribution to Christianity? You know them. Have you read about them? If you open the Bible in the New Testament, the Old Testament, do you see any Africans there? Do you see? Or you just see Jehoshaphat and say that, oh, he was, or you just, what do you see? Or they just tell you that the Africans were slaves? Because that's what they always say. If you watch any movie which try to depict any Bible story, and you see any black person there, intelligently, if he's a slave, it's black. You look. Even movies on Egypt, they make them all white. So they have conditioned us all this while with a lot of errors on our race. And we believe them. And so we don't see any hero anywhere in the Bible. And if anybody wants to control you, one of the best things they will do, one of the first strategies they will do is to cut your root, cut your history, cut your achievement, cut your foundation, and try to feed you with the wrong information. And the wrong information is that they will feed you with their heritage and their pride and their domination. So you will sing their praise, but you will never catch up with them. Never catch up with them. Never. So you see the young man who watches American movie all the time, you see the way they want to go to America. They don't care about what happens here. Their first objection is that all African politicians are bad and wicked. So when I get to America, I will make it big. Because somebody told him a lie. Somebody told him a lie. So when you're a business person, you give all the nice examples about America. And when it comes here, you give all the negative examples. If you're a doctor and you don't have any content of history, you cite all the fantastic healthcare management systems that the England people have or the Americans have. And then you come here, you cite all the bad examples and the frustration because there's no content. Don't tell me that that's the situation you're meeting. No. What you see now, the way you interpret them, is based on the content that you have. The hope you give or the hopelessness you give, it's not because the situation is hopeless. It's because of the kind of value that you bring on board. Okay, so, and if they program, which they did, they program all of us to hate our continent, to hate our people, to hate our, to hate ourselves. It's a program. And I think we are even better. Those who live with them, they have programmed them to hate themselves and to tell them that they are nothing and they can achieve nothing. It will take you some kind of information to correct that. If you see the white man who hates another black man, it's because he doesn't have the right sense of history. They told him the wrong one. The ones who have studied, they don't behave like that. Those who read the right books, they don't behave like that. They believe in common humanity. They don't believe that they are intelligent than you. More intelligent than you because you look black. No. They don't. Because they know the difference is the color and none is inferior. But if they pumped him with wrong information, and he's even is a professor, when you as an African or a black man, when you get the right mark, he will mark you down. Still that he will still not accept the fact that you as an African, or the narratives that he had on you was that you are not intelligent. So how can you be the first in the class? He fights that. He questions that. He can't understand it. Because they told him wrong history about himself and about the Africans. So it's not only the one on the street, and it's not only the African who has been wrongly educated and wrongly informed about his race. Others have also been misinformed about their own achievement and about their own race. So they think they have a big exaggerated opinion about themselves. They think that they are the only achievers. And the Africans also think that they are the non-achievers of all history, of all races. It's not true. Go and get the right history. Read. You will see a lot. You'll be able to separate a lot of wrong information from the right ones, because it is important. It calms your spirit. It gives you perspective. It makes you patient. It makes you resilient. It makes you tough. It makes you understand what is going on. And it gives you some sense of pride. And pride, out of it, comes your ability to question and achieve something for yourself. Because if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need a lot of pride. And part of it will come from your race. If you want to be honest in your dealings and go through the processes, you should be clear of your own identity, of your own heritage, of your own pride. You have to. Or you compromise and sacrifice your own people just for your own self-interest, because you have no sense of history. Okay, so when you see the struggles of your people, you don't care because you think that they are just lazy. When you hear any statement coming from anybody like of that, it's because it's shallow. It's shallow. It's not read. We're just regurgitating the history that you told him. It's not questioned. Because if they kept the people for 400 years in slavery and in colonization, what makes you think that the information that they're giving now is right? You have to go further. Because they were achievers, they were business people, they were scientists, they were Africans. And I'm not talking of even the last 2,000 or 4,000 years. And if you really want a lot of information on African achievers, a lot of it you may have to go into deep history as well. Because when they started to change, especially the 18th, from 18th to now, they made a lot of errors on the Africans. Okay, and those are the information that they're using now. And that's what is available now. That's what the World Bank and the IMF, that's all the things that they use on Africa. And most of them who were there in charge and who trained those guys who were here, most of them didn't have any value for the African. Okay, they didn't have any sense of value for the Africans. So they really thought that they use us as samples. They use us as samples and testing species for drugs that were dangerous. They use us like monkeys, And they still think. A lot of them think that we are. As a matter of fact, a lot of Africans even think that they are inferior. Because the questions that they are asking demand answers. And those answers are never. I will never accept that. And you can only do that when you have the right kind of information without you being angry, without you being hateful. When you have the right kind of information, you can debate, you can discuss all these things and never be hateful. And the best thing is that you can also use them for your professional life, because you're going to meet a lot of these guys who are still very much uninformed about the African, whether they are in Africa or they are in all these areas. Okay, constantly they are going to describe you as poor and dejected and backward. You have not made any contribution to Africa. Those are the things that you're going to hear. So if you don't equip yourself, if you don't equip yourself rightly, it will even affect the progress that you make. Assuming you work in, say, England, in a very big organization with a lot of these white boys. Not many of them have read anything significant about Africa. So maybe 80-90% of them will still going to look down upon you, don't expect you to be intelligent, don't expect you to speak even the right English. They're asking you every day, when did you come to England? You know, and when are you going back to Africa? Those are the realities that you're going to meet every day. Some of them will ask you, are you not lucky to be here? And if you're in Ghana too, you're going to meet a lot of people who are dreaming every day to go to America to have fantastic life, go to England to have fantastic life. They never sure of themselves because of the information that they give them, that they can do something wherever they are. They are in constant doubt. Constant doubt. So there is some kind of importance in you studying the history of Africa and what it can contribute. And so the safest, the last 6,000 years, read. There are a lot of articles, there are a lot of books that you can buy and read. Don't expect people to don't live on the history that they told you when you were growing up. Find them yourself now. Find out yourself now. The achievers. Who are the great achievers? Who are the innovators? There are a lot of them. Some of them from our own continent, but they changed their name. Some of them are still here, but they will just try to, debate it. I've seen that anything that they tag it to an African as innovator, you see that they try to challenge it all the time. Even if it's patented, even if they have the patent, they still want to say that no, it's not true somewhere. But when it is about American white or English white, they say that is right. That's why they still debate, that the Egyptians were Africans. They still debate it. They try to debate it just because they achieved something. Now, if they had not achieved anything, nobody would debate that they were Africans. Nobody would debate. When you see them debating anything that is African, it's because there's an achievement there. Because for the last 300 years or so, they have told them that we were not full human beings. So they're still struggling to accept that. And the Africans, a lot of them have also accepted that. We have made a lot of wrong statements. So there is some kind of importance to the development of African entrepreneurs. And go and study them. Go and read them. Read them beyond Yas Antoine and Kwame Nkrumah independence. Go to 8th century, 9th century, go 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, go to 4,000 years ago. Read. Study them. Get the facts yourself. It doesn't have to take you 2 years. It could be a month. And you'll be amazed how much information that you gather. And don't ever think that it's not important. You're deceiving yourself. If it's not important, then why do you still remember when you were one year or 2 years or 3 years? If it's not important, then why do you want to know who your grandmother was? Because that's also a history. Who your great-grandfather was. Where did he come from? You study that. If that is important, then everything else is important, because today that we are talking, 200 years to come, it will be history. Do you think that somebody else should know what we are doing today? And should that be important to them? Definitely. So today will be history in the next 300 years. And somebody else will try to research it, find things out, because it's important. It's important for them to know that there was somebody called Kwabena who lived. There was somebody called you who lived. You, at least you would want your grandchildren to find out about you and what you did. And there is always an inspiration in that. You're always trying to find out, what did my grandfather do? My great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. I actually drew the family plan and the family tree, and I tried to find up to maybe the 6th, 7th generation. I tried to track where they come from, where did they come from, what did they achieve, what did they do, who were they. I tried to find out and ask those who are alive questions, and I tried to find the connections because they are important. Don't say that they are not important. They only tell you that they are not important because they want you to become selfish. It is important. Jesus, they called him Son of David. He never rejected it. In Matthew, they tried to actually track him down to Adam. Or is it Matthew or Luke? Somewhere. You know, his genealogy, they track him. If he was tracked to Adam, and you think that history is nothing, that's why they continue to dominate you. That's why they continue to say that they say all kind of things and you agree. You love it so long as it's against Africa. So thank you very much for watching. You study, get examples of Africans who were great business people. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 400 years ago. Read about them, study about them. They should not just be telling us, why should they be telling us about Archimedes and Socrates all the time? And Shakespeare and all those kind of things. They still teach us about Shakespeare in English. I don't understand it. Shakespeare was English, you know. Leave us to also live our lives. That's one of the things I like about Malaysia and the kingdom. They have kept some things. I think they are good. I think they are good, and that's why they are people. You know, that's why you could still see them as very strong people. You can't just overcome them like that because they have the warmth of history. So when you attack them, they tell you that, hey, my great-grandfather was Otunfo, my great-grandfather was Prempe, he fought, you know. When they start to say those, they're invoking. You may think that is not important. It is important. It is important because if somebody wants to dominate you, will tell you that you're a slave and you had no heritage. They will control you. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you.